Good evening, everyone. It's your girl, Marcy Thomas, and I'm here with you on this lovely Monday evening, if you're watching us live, to share with you another great Black women writer. So come on in the room, join us, let us know where you're joining us from if you like, or say hello if it's your first time, or hello if it's your 10th time. Just let us know that you're here, and please feel free to share this out as well, because this is going to be an outstanding conversation with a lovely guest that I've actually had the opportunity to interview right about a year ago this time. So I'm excited to have her back to be able to talk about her memoir. So, for those of you who don't know me, as I said, I'm Marcy Thomas, founder of Brown Girl Collective and the BGC Book Club, which has been around since April of 2020. And I always consider it an honor to talk to creative Black women who are telling our stories, telling their stories, and we can find ourselves within those stories. So, without any further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce our guest for the evening. Tonight, we have with us Kendra Allen, who was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, and currently lives in the San Antonio area. She loves laughing and leaving. I love that. She writes Make Love in My Car, a music column for the Southwest Review. Some of her other work can be found in or on the Paris Review, High Times, The Rumpus, and more. She's the author of poetry collection, The Collection Plate, which is what we talked about last year, and also the essay collection, When You Learn the Alphabet, which won the 2018 Iowa Prize for Literary Nonfiction. Fruit Punch, her memoir that we'll be talking about this evening, is out now. So without any further ado, come on in the room. Welcome, Kendra.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
for having me.
Yes. It seems like this may be an annual thing every summer.
Look, I'm with it. Just hit me up. I'm here. Whatever you need.
So welcome back to the BGC Book Club, Kendra. So, well, I know, of course, your book has just recently come out, so we'll be talking about that. But just before we get into it, just tell us a little bit what you've been up to since the last time we chatted.
Yeah, since the last time we chatted, I moved to San Antonio. I finished a memoir. I wrote some more poems. I've kind of just been acclimating to a new city. I don't know anybody here, so I'm here by myself, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying that like, oh no, I don't know anybody. I'm saying it like, hey, I don't know anybody. This is great. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. Traveling a little bit, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, that's enough, because I mean, just moving
Yeah.
is a lot. I moved myself about a little over 18 months ago, so I know what that's like to move and get settled and figure out where everything is, and find all your people who are going to do all your hair, all those different things, your nails, all that stuff. So it definitely is a good space to be in. So, well,
Yes.
congratulations on the publication of your memoir, Fruit Punch. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed reading it because, as I was telling you before we came on, I love your writing anyway from when we talked about the collection plate last year. But this was just a deeper dive into, who you are as a person and, some of your coming of age stories and things like that. So you are relatively young. So what is it that made you decide to write a memoir?
I think it's because of that. When I think of memoir, I always hear professors or like writers or people on TV when they talk about it. It's like, oh, well, you're not interested until you like at least 35, or like you haven't lived until you hit 40, or like you don't have a life. And I had a professor while in undergrad tell me we have enough to write for a lifetime by the time we're 13. And I've always been kind of obsessed with coming of age stories. Like my favorite movies are coming of age. My favorite books are coming of age. And that disconnect of you have to be older in order to write about your life never really stuck with me. It was like you can write about your life forever. And I think I learned that from Bell Hooks. Like Bell Hooks has tens, dozens of memoirs from childhood on. And it just clicked in my mind that you do have a story from your childhood and you want to focus on that and the rebellious spirit of people saying it's not really going to be good unless like you're older. That made me want to do it as well. But mostly it's because all my core memories that I still kind of live out today is from childhood. And it's very important because we don't see children as people. And that was very important for
Mm.
me to like write my life up until like the age of 17, because I've had a full life up until that time, and you're telling me it don't matter. And I'm like, no, it matters, even though I'm a kid. So I knew I wanted to like stick to that time frame.
Right. And it was definitely very intriguing to read because, as I was saying to you earlier, there are things that we have in common, like, growing up as an only child and all of that. But then there are things that we don't have in common. And there are things that I might see happening with other, women or girls that have happened to them that I could resonate with that in your story. So it's definitely important, because ironically a couple days ago I was thinking about some things that happened when I was younger, and how it changed the whole trajectory of my life, things that happened when I was 12 or 13. So
So what do you mean it's not interesting? Like,
right,
you know what I mean?
right,
Yes.
right.
It
And one
changed
thing
the
about doing it
trajectory of your
earlier,
life.
right, doing it earlier, you don't forget the details either. So right. So, well, there are a lot of things that come up in the story, a lot of themes. One of the things that you do at the beginning is to give a disclaimer of sorts, because there are some sensitive topics that, may be triggering for some people. Tell us a little bit about just that and the process of telling these stories, and how challenging it may have been for you to do that, considering people that you're talking about are still in your life.
Yes. I know I wanted to put the trigger warning because my whole life I've been a person who kind of ask too many personal questions of people, like strangers. Like, I'm not really big on the small talk. I'm like, what generational curse do you want to break in your family? Like, first conversation, you don't even know me. Or like, what is the most pain you've ever felt? Like, I want to talk about that stuff. And I didn't really understand that that does trigger a lot of memory, a lot of trauma that people maybe are not ready to face, or maybe even not remember, or even acknowledge that it happened, because I was that same way. And I think I asked so many personal questions because I'm waiting for somebody to connect with me like that.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to let me know, like, my life is not singular. Like, my life is like, we share something, like you said, like we share a similarity. And I knew I wanted to do that trigger warning for that reason, because I don't want to force it on you. You don't have to, like, you have to meet people where they at.
Right.
And it took me so long to get there. So what makes me think you just want to open this book and like relive maybe stuff that you experienced as well, that you haven't processed or faced yet?
Right.
So I knew I wanted to do that. But I think the way I approached writing the things that I did in the memoir, trigger warning, it does discuss like childhood sexual abuse, like violence in general. Like, it discusses the things. And I knew I wasn't sure. I was kind of iffy about it, because part of my brain was thinking, I hear the voices in my head of like, that's the only story that we see about Black women, you know?
Mm. Mm.
Like, that's the only story that we hear, that we read, that we watch. Like, somebody is hurting them, and like they don't know how to get back up from it, or like nobody is helping them. So I had that in my mind, and that kind of is what made me take so long to finish it, because the book got pushed back 2 times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it got pushed back 2 times because I kept writing it, because I had that in my mind. But something within those rewrites just sort of told me, like, Kendra, we see this, but we don't see this in your voice. Like, we don't see
Right.
this from your perspective. We don't see, because we all have different perspectives. And so I had to kind of talk myself into it. And then I'm just used to writing about myself. My other books are about me and my family and my life. So
Oh,
that
okay.
was, yeah. So that wasn't hard, but if I'm actually being honest, something that I've had to tell myself is, Kendra, you've probably been writing so openly because you kind of want that reaction from your family. You know what I mean? Like you've
Okay.
tried, like you want that pushback or like that confusion or like that it like exposed feeling from them because you try to like share this stuff in private. You try to share this stuff silently. You've screamed this stuff. You've cried this stuff. You've talked calmly through this stuff, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't clicking. And I think the more that I wrote, the more that I had to just tell myself that all that stuff that we deem like we keep it in the house, we don't take it out the house, or like
Right.
all that stuff we deem where this is family business, this is private. That's the stuff that we need to be talking about in public, because it's like it's so many other people who are like silenced because they have that in their head. And I know people look at my work and like call it brave or like courageous, and it never clicked in my head. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm not even telling you the full truth. Or I'm just like going around it, and I'm still getting this reaction. So this book, I just really wanted to like tell the whole truth versus like the sugar coated. That was a long answer, but like the sugar coated version.
Well, no, that's fine. It was a long question, so that's okay.
Yes.
But I think that is so important that, how do I put it? By you telling your story and your using your unique voice, it does open it up for other people to tell their stories, because all of us have things that have happened to us in our lifetimes, and sometimes we do hold it and we're afraid to share it because we're afraid that we won't be believed, or we're afraid that once we tell it nothing's going to change. And you kind of alluded to that in your story, that nothing really changes when
Yeah.
you do tell it.
Yeah.
But it's still important, because if we want to get to a better place, and have our experience our own healing, then that's something that we just have to do, and the others just have to deal with it sometimes.
Or not, but you gonna
Or
hear
not.
what I gotta say.
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
most
Well, one of the,
and unfortunately, it's like more times not than yes. That's the unfortunate part.
but one of the things that really brought up for me is just the fact, and that unfortunately, as Black women, Black girls growing into women, that the level of protection that we need isn't always there.
Yes. I'm shaking my head because I literally was thinking about this earlier today, and like what my idea of protection is, or like what I will want in terms of protection. And I don't know that answer. Like I think we see online like the protect Black women thing, or like, yeah, I don't know. We are not protected, so I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I don't know. I've been thinking about it in a way where I don't know. I don't know. Because I've been thinking about my mama a lot and thinking about like her not being protected,
Mm-hmm.
and like what that would take for her to sort of give it to me when she hasn't had it, and what that
Right.
requires. It will require her to like tell some truths as well. And it's back to that thing where like I can't force it. I can't force it.
Right.
Like a
Right.
big theme in the book is accepting people for who they are, like accepting people for where they at, not thinking of them like their potential or like will they change. And when I think about protection, I think about it in that similar way of I protected myself throughout my life emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
physically, but I've also taken on the role of like trying to protect my mama as well, emotionally and physically. So when I think of protection, it's like, how can I ask her? Like, what do I expect of her when I've been like taking on this role? But then it also flips of like, why was she letting me do that? You know what I mean? And that's like the
Mm-hmm.
hard truth that I'm trying to figure out. Because I don't know what protection would look like, because and my mom said she protected me, and I got a roof over my head, clothes on my back. I have like
Mm,
all this. Like she's doing the thing. Like she's a single parent. She's showing up to all the games. She's taking the teams to practice. She's like making sure I'm good. She's checking on my homework. Like she's the parenting role. Like she's performing it really, really well, except for the emotional aspect. And that's because she didn't have that either. So
right.
yeah, I'm rambling, but yeah,
That's fine. I mean, because I
yes.
mean, all that you're saying makes sense because sometimes a person, unless they have really put forth the effort and done the work, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times it's hard for somebody to give you what they didn't get themselves.
Yes, and I don't think you can protect anybody. Like we can't, Black women as a collective can't really be protected ever if nobody has empathy for us. And I think
Mm,
that's what I'm getting to. Like we're not empathetic towards Black women in general. Like we love to humble us. The world loves to humble us. So it's like no empathy there. So of course, like you can't protect me. You don't acknowledge or can't see anything that I'm going through because you think I can just take it. But then it goes
mm,
into like, why have I just taken it? Like, why have I just kept taking it? And like, what would be fractured if I say I'm not taking it no more? You know what I mean? Yeah.
mm-hmm. That's so true. Yeah. What happens when you decide not to take it anymore? Hmm.
Oh, when you decide not to take it no more, you're gonna lose some people and some relationships and
Right.
some closeness in those relationships. That's something I've been learning since I've been writing creative nonfiction. It seems
Mm-hmm.
like it seems like every time I write something, it get darker and darker, and like more things come out and more memory comes out, and that shifts like relationships. Like my relationship with my parents have drastically changed based on things I've
Mm,
written down on in a book on a piece of paper. And I kind of knew that risk, and I was kind of willing to take that risk because part of me wanted it to change. And like if
mm-hmm.
it's like very extreme changes, I'm okay with that as well, because the way that I'm able to speak up for myself now, the way that I'm able to stand up for myself, set boundaries, stick to those boundaries, that is worth whatever I lose to me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I told you I have so many things bookmarked and a lot of notes, and I know we're not going to get to all of them. But one of the
Yes.
things that you said, and this kind of speaks to what we've been talking about, just about Black girls in general. But there was in the statement, and I'm paraphrasing: you're scared for the voices of the girls in your family being hurt, being touched, being silenced. And I think that just your fact of telling this story is going to help that next generation and the generations to come.
Yeah, I really do hope so. Like I wrote this book for kid me, but I also wrote it for them. And I also wrote it for kid my mama. Like my mama is a kid, but I was around, I lived with like 3 kids for an entire year, very small kids, four,
Mm-hmm.
6, 8. And I could just sort of see myself in them. Like I can see the oldest, like when she gets around crowds, and she's at my hip because like she feels safe with me, but she's like overwhelmed and like anxious, and like you could see like she's panicking on the inside. I see that in her. I see their laughs, like probably things have already happened to them that they would never forget. Um,
Right.
but I want them to be able to have something to be like, hey, you're not alone. Like you're not by yourself, and you have somebody if you want to talk to. Like I said, you can't force it. You can't. Um, you have to like create that safe environment. I just don't want you to feel protected. I want you to feel safe enough to like talk back and forth with me. And I had a talk with my 8-year-old cousin. She was here in the
Yeah.
summer for like a
Mm-hmm.
few weeks, and we would be up to like 4 a.m. She watching YouTube. And I was telling her how when I was in school, like people would joke about my middle name, like they would make jokes and like pick on me a little bit. And I was just telling her how that made me feel, and how like and you could see like her guard come down, and she's like, well, what did you say? Like, how did you respond? And it gets in your head like, oh, she's experiencing this. She's experiencing this now, and she don't know how to react to it. So if I can just like tell her my own experiences, it makes her feel calmer. Like I can see it. And it just makes me proud of them, not of myself, of doing that. It makes me proud of them that like they can ask those questions, that they feel comfortable enough to ask those questions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And tell us what your middle name is. I know what it is. But...
It's Infinity. So I got all the to infinity and beyond. And teachers, it's spelled like infinite. So teachers will always be like, Kendra Infinite Allen. And I'll be like, it's Infinity. And then the jokes come. Yeah.
Well, I say that your parents in naming you, that they could foretell that your work and your words and everything that you do is going on to infinity. So hey, it means something.
Thank you. I'll take that.
We'll take that. One of the things also just in telling your stories, and throughout the book, you are, going back and forth. There's conversations with a therapist, which, we love therapy around here. We believe that it's important, and that is very helpful if you can, be willing to dive in and do that work that's required. So in going through that, is that one of the things that helped you to be able to tell these stories, or you think you would have been able to do it even without that?
I wouldn't have been able to accept the gravity of the stories without therapy for sure. Like the therapist that I write about in the book, he was my first therapist, and I was with him for like a year and a half. And that entire year and a half, we didn't really overcome anything. It was literally just, well, we did. I take that back. But the year and a half was spent of him trying to get me to accept the language around the happening. So he was trying to get me to accept that like this is emotional neglect, or like this is sexual abuse, or this is molestation, or this is physical abuse. So it was a year and a half of me just like pushing back, like, no, that's not that. Like everybody goes through that. Like, it was me like debating him on my life, because again, accepting it, I would have to like throw the accountability on my mama, and me and my mama are like super close. So like that felt weird. It felt weird because she's done everything for me my whole life. So what do you mean like this is wrong that she did? Look, she did great. Like, what are you talking about? Right. What are you talking about my mama? It's that. But it was just like a year and a half of doing that. And I don't think it would be a book if he was not in my life at the time he was in my life, because I was going through I don't know. I wasn't aware that I was going through like the aftermath of childhood. I wasn't aware of that. I thought I was like in therapy because I just couldn't feel anything. Like that's why I went originally. It was just like I don't feel emotions, like I don't feel connected to anybody outside of my mama. I don't feel close to nobody. People can like, it's just like an emptiness, and I had to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I probably been depressed since I was like 7, or like, just accepting those kinds of things. So yeah, it would have been a way different book if I did not spend all that time on that couch in front of a man, which was also weird because he was a man, and it was like, I'm telling you things I've never shared with anybody in my life, that I didn't even share with myself, and now I got to share with you. And like you playing with me. That's what it feels like. Like you playing with me, but it's really like he literally did help me a lot. Yeah.
Right. It's one of the things like in the book you talk about, well, it's like some memories, either they happened more than once or you weren't exactly sure when it happened.
Yeah.
And, sometimes feeling like maybe I dreamed this. Maybe that really didn't happen.
It's like a grief brain. I think that's like the term, like grief brain, like when you're grieving, or like you're mentally like off balance a little bit, everything, all your memories start to seem fabricated because it's like it's a defense mechanism. I think like the delusion about it, the delusion about like the severity of like the language, like the words that he was giving me, depression, all these words, like it felt way heavier, and the grief brain was like pushing it back and like minimizing it because, like I said, the emotional neglect of it all, I never had to, like, the only emotions I really had was I cry when I get real mad because I don't know what else to do. And then I'm extremely goofy. So it was like very extreme. And I think that grief kind of skews the memory. And that's why I'm like a big proponent of like therapy as well, because people say writing is therapeutic, but like no, like the writing just gets the memory down on paper, but it doesn't allow you to understand it and to comprehend it and like the intricacies within that memory, to trust yourself. Yeah, like that learning to trust yourself and to trust your memory, because you're not just having the same like memory over and over with details added for no reason. Like you have specific details, the core memories, and they don't go away. And like you tell the story at the same time, but you convince yourself because you don't trust yourself because it's painful. So you don't trust yourself to be like, okay, yeah, I didn't make that up. That actually did happen. I remember the color of the comforter on the bed. So I'm not crazy. That's the thing. And I think that's like a very dismissive word in general. And it's a word that like has been used against me a lot in childhood. And so it's I'm gonna stop there. Full stop.
It's something. Well, one of the other things, just shifting gears a little bit, because that's one part of your story, but of course that's not all of your story. One of the things that you talk about, just being in relationship or meeting or liking boys or having boys like you and things like that. And that was a real interesting story where you had to kind of like pick which one that you really liked or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. I'm still like that.
Good to have options, honey. Always good to have options.
That was very important for me because I had a great childhood. It's not all bad. Like I had so much fun. I got to discover what I like, who I am, what I don't like. Like I've tried every art form. I danced, I sung, I performed, like I've done all this stuff. I played sports. So like I got to be a person as a kid, but I also was like a mini adult. That's like the flip side of it. So I wanted to include like those joyful, like common kid moments of like you having a crush, of you like getting your first fake boyfriend in like 6th grade, of you, because we don't think it's that serious, but you remember it. You remember it. And it's like, it is serious because it kind of teaches you the dynamics. It teaches you what not to do. It teaches you a lot. It's very important. And I just wanted to be able to show that like there is love in the midst of this. And I'm just naturally goofy like that. So real heavy stuff, I'm gonna throw a joke in there. Like I'm gonna ask you a personal question, but we gonna laugh about it at some point. So I always, that's always like in the front of my mind, to be able to include joy even in like the heaviness of everything, because laughing, I've laughed more than I've done anything else. So yeah, I made sure I wanted to like show those moments and like how creative kids can be to get to like adulthood. You know what I mean? Like have adulthood in childhood. Like we're so eager. We're so eager to like connect with the opposite sex. So like we so eager to connect with the same sex. So like we so eager to kiss somebody or like see what things feel like in our bodies. And I wanted to honor that in a child state. Yeah.
Right. And that's definitely important, because you're right, we experience all those things. We learn about things about our bodies, our sexuality, all kinds of things as a young person. And, oftentimes we can be in environments that want to make it seem like those things aren't normal.
Yes.
You know, or
Yes.
that.
It's like this thing where my mama, I write about like this girl that I admired as a kid. She was like a teenager and I was like a little girl, and I would just be with her at the rec center. And it's like she was like really, boys liked her. Boys liked her a lot. And I remember one time we were driving by a house and she was like on the porch kissing the boy, like on his lap, like just kissing the boy. And my mama stopped the car. She was like, "Get off his lap. You too young for that." And then and she got her. She was scared. She was terrified. So grandma was in the house. I was like, "I know your grandma. I don't know you out here doing this." But
Right.
my
That's
mama
kind
was
of
like,
old.
yeah, my mom was like, "You too young for that." But in my head, I'm like, she's literally the exact age for that. She's 16. Like she's gonna touch and feel and things that teenagers do. Like it's not a taboo thing. All kids do this. Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. And I remember you talking about her that, and I'm going to mess it up, but something about just the fact that she's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
She was an attractive girl and a lot of people liked her. But there was something that you said that I want to say, forgive me, you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not reading, I wrote it down.
Yeah.
But quiet or not, we all end up with a similar type of empty. So she was like a quiet girl and, things that she experienced and maybe somebody else who wasn't as cute or maybe loud or whatever, but we
Yeah.
all end up with a similar type of empty. How was
Yeah, like
that?
yeah, it's like because we're trained as girls to be in competition with each other, to compete with each other, to want to be the cutest girl, to want to be the one who's seen. And like she is that girl, but she's also like I talk to her every day because like the other girls her age don't want to hang with her because they mad a boy they like her. And it's like she's not even like that. Just talk to her and she will tell you like she has this entire other side of her that like she's gone through something. She's like seen some things, and that's why she doesn't engage in that or in the way and like that attention. Like she doesn't want that attention. You know what I mean? But like it's stuff that comes with that type of attention. Like we think we want it, we think we want to be seen by the boys. It's very hard stuff that comes with that. And that's why like she's so quiet. You know what I mean? Like you don't ask her that. Like you just see that attention, but you're not understanding the weight that she's carrying. You don't understand like something probably happened to her. Like boys just think they can touch you at that age. They think they could just grope you, grab you. Like you don't know what's going on. And I think I wrote like in another section of the book in church, like that type of attention would make me want to like skin myself alive. Like I couldn't even imagine all the eyes, like, you know what I mean? And I think I said a similar type of empty because we're that singular thing, like we think it's singular and like we think we can do something to stand out and be different, but you're gonna get treated the same if that boy has that mindset. It don't matter how you look. It don't matter what he tell you. Like it's gonna come out eventually that he don't see you as a person, and like you're gonna get that pushback, and you're still gonna feel that weight and that heaviness and like that disappointment. Especially in childhood, because we kids, like we don't know how to deal with emotions and things like that. So I wrote that line for that, and I just like knew her so. I just felt like I knew her so well. I might didn't, but it just felt like that. Like I felt very centered when I would like talk to her. Like we would hang out at the rec after school, or like, yeah, that's what I mean by that.
Right. And you brought up the part about the church because that's on my list too. This thing about, going to church and, how at a certain point in time, your mom was like, based upon, being, a mother and a wife at some point and having relationships and all these different things at one point, like a lot of women do at a certain point, they decide, okay, I'm going to go and be in church and, I'm going to live this Christian life now. Yes. And how the church that you were at, it was like, don't do this, don't do that, like a lot of churches are.
Don't breathe. Yes, it's like, yeah. I just told somebody yesterday, like, I think my mama went back into the church to like deal with heartbreak, like to cope with heartbreak and a consequence. I don't want to say words. I don't want to say the consequence of that, but like the reality of like delving into religion like that is that she just kind of fell in love with Jesus and it had like romantic aspects to that as well. And like I don't think we talk about that. Like we don't even like the lyrics and the songs are like it's like I'm in love and it's just like what is which is fine, but it's just something off. I don't know what it is. It's just like a aura or like a energy that's like this is weird. But I feel like she went to the church to deal with her heartbreak, and in turn, like we just distracted ourselves, like got involved in everything in the church. Because that's what it is. It's a distraction. You want to be at church 4 times a week because you don't got to be at home thinking about what happened with your husband, or you don't have to be at home thinking about like what's going to happen to your daughter, or things like that, because she's also going through her own things. But church was immediately when at first, I'm not gonna lie, as a small child, I loved it. I love to sing in the choir. I love the songs. I love the music. I love like being involved and participating in things because I got to learn that way. But then at some point, it was just like, oh, y'all think women are like things, or like, oh, y'all think I'm finna be up in here and like these old men gonna be looking at me grow up and like commenting on my body, and like y'all think I'm not gonna say nothing. I need to be quiet. So it was back to that silencing thing, like silencing thing. So it was that, and I don't know. I just always felt stuck to a certain extent in church because I was there so much. And even like the older kids, like they would graduate high school. We would never see them again. And I just knew that would be like my fate. Luckily, I got to leave it like a couple years earlier. I came home from Houston one summer and we didn't go to church on one Sunday. And I was like, that's weird. Like that ain't never we ain't never skipped. But I didn't say nothing. I was like, she ain't waking me up, so I'm cool. But then another week came and we ain't go again. And I was like, that's weird too. Like we ain't never in a row. We didn't even go in a week. So what's going on? I asked my mama and she was just like, I left the church. She's like, my uncle was the pastor. My great uncle was the pastor. He died. And so they end up replacing him. Right. And I was like, what you mean? Like, we don't go to the church no more? Because I never thought that was an option. And she was just like, we're going to find another church. And at that time, I had a car. She was like, you don't have to go to a church where I go. Like, you can find your own, but you going to church. Like, she threw that out there. She's like, find a church on your own, but you going. And I ended up finding one of them churches. I wasn't really looking. I just ended up being at a church where like the pastor is on the screen and like they have a little live band and they sing their 3 songs. The pastor preach for 30 minutes and you out of there in an hour. And I joined that church so quick, so she won't make me go when she going. And so I end up joining, and I wasn't really feeling that either. It was just to get through high school, honestly. I would be in there not paying attention, but yeah.
And it's just something that you said that because, speaking in memory, I went through a phase of my life, the same thing, where it was like, go to church, spend a lot of time at church. And I mean, how do I put it? I'm cool with Jesus. Sometimes the representatives aren't that great.
I say that all the time. I say, like, I don't have a problem with God. I have a problem with the people who love God. Like, it be too much. Like, because y'all throw, not the loving God be too much, but like the expectations that y'all place on other people that you're not even fulfilling for yourself is crazy to me. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And, just some of, it's funny because I was talking to my best friend about this earlier today, that a lot of times in a church environment. I mean, it happens out here in social media and a lot of other places as well. But people are quick to judge a mistake, an error, whatever, and be willing to throw you away or make you be a terrible person because of a mistake or an error. And that we need to really be more cognizant of showing grace towards others, because when we make the mistake or when we, don't do something right, we want grace shown toward us, but we're not always quick to give it to other people, and just to be mindful of that.
Yeah, I'm learning that. I'm still learning that for myself as well. Yeah, you just said a word, because sometimes I'll be like, I'm going to cut you off.
Okay, here we go. Collection plate. Pass it.
Sometimes it'll be like one thing, I'll be like, oh, you will never talk to me again.
But yeah, I mean, and it's that. I mean, that is a real thing, and just even thinking about back to something that happened, like when you had the situation where these brothers were liking you and trying to figure out what was what, and the mother or auntie, I can't remember who she was, but she was called you fast, but it's like it wasn't you, it was the boys, and why is it that we're quick to label girls as being fast when that's not necessarily the case in all instances, and in those cases where maybe it is, there's probably a reason. So why aren't you digging deeper to figure out what's really going on?
100%. Like, why is that the default? Like, why is it always the girl's fault? Like, even if something happened to her or like something doesn't happen, it's always like, well, what did you do? How could you prevent it? How could you? And it's just like, it's like that. How could you? And it's like, what do you mean? And of course, it's projection. Like I said in the book, like she probably been called fast before. Somebody, her mom probably called her fast. She's paying it for it. But like you said, why can you see my fault in it? I'm just sitting here. What about like these boys cornering me every time I walk out the door? Like, what we gonna acknowledge that? Or like they all up in my face, or like you better tell us who you like. Like that's like, how about you check that? Okay. But I think it's just like that internalized misogyny. I think that's where that fast comes from. It's so deeply rooted and internalized in us. And I say it all the time, like patriarchy is so powerful. Like we want men to like us, even if we don't. We want them to find us desirable. We want them to find us nice and cool and presentable. And we only want that because they want that from men as well. Like they created it. So like, they want that same thing. They want to be found desirable by other men. They want to be found cool and like masculine, and like they want that male approval. So of course, it's internalized in us that like that's the goal, and that's crazy because like when you think about it, they just following each other in a circle. Like nobody is standing out. Like nobody is standing out. It's all cyclical. And I think that's like one of the themes in the book as well. Everything is cyclical. And until like we can face that internalized misogyny, which it's lifelong. It's lifelong. Like it just pops out sometimes. You be like, dang, the patriarchy got me today.
Yep. That's true. And as women, some women can be some of the strongest proponents of it, we see in many cases.
Yes.
Because I don't know, it's their desire to hold on, or attempt to hold on, or if they don't have anything to hold on, they're trying to grasp for something that they feel that they're going to get, from that relationship. And I'm saying these things, I am not anti-relationship. Neither one of us are. We're not anti-man. That's not what this is.
That's a part of the patriarchy too. You have to preface it by saying, hey, I'm not against men.
Right. 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 That's true. Because the minute you say something, people automatically think that that's what it is. And that's not what it is. Some of the most meaningful people in my life, past and present, are men. So that's not it. But yeah, there's just a thing about that. One of the other things I like that you mentioned in your book, and this is in relation to the church, saying that we as women, we're thought of as ribs, not the kind you cook, not the kind like your daddy used to cook, but the ones that can break and crash and renew over time.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
love that.
that's wild. Like to think about. Like it's so poetic. It's so beautiful. It sounds like such a life like a life affirming thing. But when I think about it, it's wild. Like it just like it's no way we would ever be seen as autonomous if like we're a rib. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
we are automatically attached. Like everything we do is attached to like a man's pleasure or like a man's ability to see himself. You know what I mean? Like it's skewed and it gets written as if like we're doing it a favor, you know, like doing somebody a favor by being the rib, but it's kind of like slavery, bro. Like like it's kind of like slavery. Like, hey, you're this man's rib, and like we package it in like these beautiful words like soulmate and love of my life, and you know, things like that, which is beautiful. I believe in love too. But I think it's very important that like we just find spaces to where everything we do is not centering a man. Yeah. And it's
Hmm.
something I still struggle with my writing as well, because it's like I'm like I don't want to write about men today, but then it's also like I kind of have to in order to survive. Like I have to be aware of like what's going on with men because it directly affects like my survival. I have to be aware of like when your eyes shift from light to dark. I have to be aware of like all these things just to continue to live. But then it's yeah, I'm gonna stop there. Full stop.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's something just to think about that because I know, back to church real quick. One of the things that always used to puzzle me is a lot of the teaching, and it's not necessarily even biblical. Just the way things that are taught is that it's the woman is, the rib. The woman is the helpmeet. The woman is to prepare herself to be, a wife and a mother at some point. But what about the woman who doesn't become a wife or a mother? What about the woman who doesn't want to become a wife or a mother? Then what about her?
Does
Is
she
she not? Is
count?
she incomplete? Is she incomplete? Is she
Yeah,
irrelevant?
does she count? And I think about like even when women do get married, other men respect her because of a man, not because of her. It's like that's that man wife. Like you don't talk to her like that. Not you don't talk to her like that because you just don't talk to her like that because she's a person. She's a human. You don't want to talk to me like that because male approval is so powerful. And I think yeah, I take back what I said that it's slavery. Nothing is slavery except slavery. I would say
Right.
like it's like a servitude of like in order to be worthy, you have to do something to prove that you're worthy of it. Like you have to give. Like you can't just exist and be loved, especially as like black women. Like you can't just exist and be loved. You got to do something. You know, you got to give your all. You got to suffer. You got to yeah, I'm just not with that. Because you're gonna suffer before I suffer playing with me. But yeah.
That's too funny. Well, I want to ask you because actually, believe it or not, we're getting close on time. Believe it or not,
Oh,
it's just a great conversation. It doesn't even seem like it.
I really been
But I
talking
do.
then.
Yeah, we're just talking. We're just talking. I do want to ask you, Fruit Punch. I know why your book is called Fruit Punch, but for those
Hmm.
who don't know, why did you select the name of Fruit Punch for your memoir?
Yeah, it's just I would say it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for blood. The book is separated into two parts, and both parts are called blood. And the first part is like bloodshed, and then the second part is like bloodlines, and just how that connect. You know, like the bloodshed, of course, coming of age. So I talk about my period and things, getting my period. And like the look and feel and like weight and gravity of blood. it gives like a visceral reaction to the body sometimes. Like some people get woozy when they see blood. Some people like to touch it. Some people like to, like if your finger ever bled and like you suck the blood, like you want to taste it. It's so like just to see it tastes like a penny, but like just to see. And so that's what fruit punch represents, just blood.
Okay. And yeah, there's the cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like so I knew, but for those who haven't had a chance to read it yet. But I really enjoy your story. Is there anything that I may not have asked that you want people to know about the book that would encourage them to read it?
No, not really. You asked amazing questions. I would just say it's it's a it's a ride of a book. I would say that. But yeah, thank you so much for the questions. I'm gonna be thinking about a couple of them when I get off here.
A little more in depth, like write me an essay and send it to me. No, I'm just kidding.
For sure, I will send you a long email.
And another thing,
like actually, I didn't mean that at all.
Well, I'm just saying that real quick because, like, we were talking about briefly about men. Now, you see all the books behind me. I love to read. My father was actually the one who encouraged me to read more than magazines when I was coming up because I like to read, certain magazines, be up on, hip hop culture, or actually hip hop. Well, I'm telling my age. Never mind. Hip hop wasn't around when I first started reading.
It's okay.
The magazines and stuff like that. But I like, I want to read teen magazines, or about the Jacksons or whoever, the Jackson 5 and things like that. And he was like, you need to start reading things that are going to help you when it comes time for you to go to school. So he would have me reading things like Wuthering Heights and Tale of Two Cities and all that kind of stuff that was just like,
Wuthering Heights is fire.
Right. He was like, read it and write a report.
Why do we all live the same life?
Right. Like, I want you to read this in the summertime and write a report about it. So, he passed away a few years ago, but I would always bring that up. He said, well, it was for your own good.
It was.
Right. And actually, I know now he would be happy to see. I love books. I love to read. And, he would love this platform that I've created. But one thing I love, and I oftentimes say this to the people that I talk to, I really appreciate the fact that there is a Kendra Allen that is able to write her poetry. You're able to write your poetry. You're able to write your stories using your poetic voice, using your talents, because when I was coming up, I didn't have things like this that I could gravitate towards. And now, young girls, young women, college students, whatever, older women, we have, a lot of different things that we can choose from that resonate with us and that tell our stories in unique ways. So I thank you, Kendra.
Thank you so much.
Adding your story to the canon.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. So is there anything that I know that the book just came out a few days ago. So you have anything coming up that maybe people can be on the lookout for to follow you? Or
I have a event tomorrow night with Prince George's Memorial Library. That's at 7. That'll be streamed. And then I'll be at the Mississippi Book Fest this weekend. So those are like the two things coming up that I'm excited about. I love Mississippi, so excited to be there. And Alice Walker gonna be there, and she gonna give a talk. So like my fangirl brain is like, oh my God, like just to be able to see her speak is like, I might cry low key. So I'm excited about that.
Well, I'm excited for you because, talking about books by Black women, believe it or not, the very first book I read, it was in a women's literature class. First book I read by a Black woman author was Color Purple. So hey, I'm wearing it today.
And it still holds up today. Like that book is still good no matter how many times you read it.
Right. Reading
Yes.
the book, not just the film or the play or whatever, but actually reading the book. That was the very first one I read by a Black woman writer in college. So, yeah. So, I'm
Yeah.
happy for you. You'll have to tell me about that. So, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to let you go so you can enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll just make a couple of quick announcements about what's coming up next. So if you want to, if you hang out for a second, I'll make these announcements and then I'll come holler at you offline if you got a minute.
Okay.
All right. All right. Thanks so much for joining us, Kendra. We appreciate you. And as I said, if as long as you keep writing, you can come back as much as you would like. So I appreciate having a chance to talk to you. So just by means or by way of announcements, let's see here. I'm just getting my notes. Next week, I will be talking to Megan Giddings. Her book is The Women Could Fly. So next week, next Monday, that I'll be talking to her about her book. And 2 weeks from that, I will have we'll be talking about Patience is a Subtle Thief by Abi Ishola Ayodele. So forgive me if I said that wrong. I'm gonna get it right before she comes on live. So as always, everyone, thank you for joining us this evening. I appreciate your time and, staying attentive and hearing about Kendra's wonderful book. And it sounds like where I live is about to storm, so it's perfect timing for us to get finished. So I look forward to seeing you the next time. And until then, take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.